For all new San Francisco chapter. Thank you to David slash Mark for starting the recording. David, if you want to go to the next slide. We're super excited that you're all taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today to learn more about what's happening in Sacramento with safe streets, active transportation, and transit this year. Just before we get started, a couple of notes. We are recording this session, and we're going to make it available afterwards on our YouTube channel. So in case you have colleagues who want to catch up after the fact, this will be available. And we'll share that out afterwards with everyone who signed up. If you have questions, put them in the chat. We have about 30 minutes or so of content we're going to present about on sponsored bills, trends in Sacramento, and some electoral politics. So we'll answer questions at the end, and we should have plenty of time for Q&A. So please add those to the chat as they come up, and we can answer them at the end. And then finally, Streets for All is a nonprofit. We have this amazing state team, and they are supported by our members and donations. So if you like our work, please consider joining our members club, which supports the team and supports us as an organization showing up in Sacramento and fighting for all of these things. So with that, I want to introduce Marc Vukcevich, who's our Director of State Policy, and David Martinez, Streets for All's newest employee, who's our State Policy Manager. They're going to be giving us an overview of what's happening in Sacramento. So I'm going to turn it over now to Marc and David to take us through the rest of the session.
Hi, everybody. Marc Vukcevich, he, him. Yeah, if you don't know me, I've been leading our state policy efforts for a few years now. And so everything that we do in the state legislature is something that myself or David and I touch in some capacity. And so, yeah, pleasure to see everyone. And I also just want to like highlight the fact that because Streets for All started in Southern California, there tends to be like a huge Southern California membership that comes to our events. And I love that on this meeting right here, I see people from Sacramento all the way to San Diego on this call right now. And I think that's really cool. David, if you want to say anything up front, feel free to go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to introduce myself. I'm David Martinez, he, him, State Policy Manager with Streets for All. Been a volunteer for a while, and happy to get to know everyone and answer your questions later on. All right.
Cool. Let's get started. If we can go to the next slide. There is a lot happening in Sacramento this year, and so our rough agenda for the day is going to be talking about our sponsored bills, legislative trends, and what's going on in the elections world. But we can take it from there. So I want to start with this amazing graphic design slide that I made. There's nothing better that I've ever created, and that looks more beautiful than this of how Sacramento works and the timeline. Because sometimes I think that's the part that people who are trying to engage or understand the arena of the legislature sort of it's hardest to follow if you're not in the thick of it. And so right now we're in the middle of the first policy committee season for bills. Prior to this, we had the legislative recess from last year, which is when we do a lot of policy ideation, development, forming coalitions and pitching legislators and different ideas. Then we had the bill introduction season, and bill introduction deadline was February 20th. And then now we're in the middle of policy committees where the bill will be evaluated in small committees on its policy merits to see if the policies can move on. Then they go to appropriations, which will evaluate the bills on their fiscal merits. Then it goes to the floor of the first house. If it's an assembly bill, it goes to the assembly floor. If it's a Senate bill, it goes to the assembly floor. And then, just as you may or may not remember from your gov class, the bills switch houses. An assembly bill will then go to the Senate and vice versa. And that process will all repeat itself all the way until it hits the governor's desk around the beginning of September. And the governor will have until September 30th to take action, sign, veto, or not sign, which I don't think he's ever done, or maybe he's done once or twice on all of the bills in the legislative session or this legislative session. And that's how the legislature works. And happy to go back to this slide at any time or send it to folks. But for now, let's move on to the next slide. which is talking about our sponsored bills. These are the bills. What a sponsored bill means, and I want to explain that, is that Streets for All has a level of like ownership over the policy. And so ultimately the bill is still the senator or assembly members that we're working on, but usually we have a hand in guiding the politics or the policy, either actually writing and developing the policy itself or being there as an advocate along the way, lobbying and advocating and ensuring that the policy can move forward. And so these are our 10 sponsored bills for the year. I'm going to start with the first two and then pass it to David, and we'll switch off from there. First one, AB 1599 by Assemblymember Patrick Aarons from Sunnyvale. It would create a centralized transit stop registry with identifying different amenities at those transit stops, as well as synchronizing data that have at those transit stops and between different transit agencies to ensure the end user, the transit user, has a better experience, doesn't miss transfers, all of the stuff that can happen when you're at a stop served by multiple transit agencies. And yeah, it's a great bill. It was part of the Transit Transformation Task Force recommendations. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. And yeah, I'll go to the next bill. AB 1740. Oh, one thing I mentioned as well is that I'm going to talk about the bills that we introduced. I'm also going to talk about where they are a little bit in the legislative session because some bills have actually changed substantially. And this is a decent one. This is an example of that. AB 1740 by Assemblymember Zabur, who's from the WeHo Santa Monica area, or at least that's the area he represents. It would make building bike lanes, safety projects, and housing easier in some of the most urbanized parts of the coastal zone. Think about Santa Monica, San Diego, San Francisco. So it exempts certain of these projects from the Coastal Act and how that works in these overwhelmingly urban areas, because we understand that urban areas have different needs than areas that need to be that have conservation needs, for an example, or environmentally sensitive habitat. This bill has been amended as of this past Monday or Tuesday to be exclusive just to the city of Santa Monica rather than applying to the 15 to 20 or so jurisdictions it would have applied to before. Yeah, I'll pass it to David for the next two bills.
All right, I get to talk about e-bikes. Our first one is SB 1167 by Senator Blakespear. This is really tackling the electric motorcycle problem, e-moto problem on our roads. It cracks down on those devices being sold as e-bikes. It requires labels. It requires disclosure. It requires a lot of different things. I think like a plain language bullet point summary of the bill took up 2 pages. And we're really happy to be co-sponsoring this bill with People for Bikes, Streets Are for Everyone, and the California Bicycle Coalition, really tackling what people think is an e-bike problem, but is actually the e-moto problem. The e-motos are very powerful devices that they can go above 28 miles per hour. So we want to make sure that we're doing what we can to address what is actually the issue on our roadway. Our next bill, also on e-bikes, is Assembly Bill 2284 by Assemblymember Dixon. This will require the Attorney General to make a list of devices that people might think are e-bikes, that might look like e-bikes, but are actually not e-bikes, and they are the e-motos. The Attorney General recently put out a consumer alert on these devices, and it basically asks parents and just people to make sure that the device you're buying is legally compliant. And what this bill will do is essentially just require the AG to basically follow up on that and say, hey, let's make a list of what those devices that we're talking about that are illegal actually are.
Wonderful. AB 1837 by Assemblymember Marc Gonzalez. This bill would extend and expand the transit lane photo enforcement program. What the policy is about how transit agencies are allowed to use photo-based enforcement to ensure that drivers aren't parking in the bus lane. That was authorized in 2010. Then in 2021 or so, there was like a full statewide pilot that allowed that, as well as to prevent that, as well as cars parked at bus stops. And that pilot is set to expire very soon. And so there's an effort to expand that pilot. Yeah, we originally introduced this bill with also expanding some of the violations to include parking in bike lanes and a few other stopping violations. that's since been removed from the bill, and I'm not even sure exactly where we're going to land in terms of the expansion. Whether we were hoping to make it permanent, but it just might be another expansion or extension of the current pilot program. So we'll see where it goes from there. That we're dealing with something Mark Gonzalez, yeah, from Koreatown area, if I remember correctly. AB 1976 by Wicks. This is what we're labeling the Safe Streets Streamlining Act. This is sort of like an abundance oriented policy around the delivery of bike and ped projects, reducing petition requirements, or sorry, I would even just say not even reducing so much as like making the petition requirements for neighborhood traffic calming more fair. Petition requirements are where you at like a neighborhood has to ask, have a certain number of signatures to get traffic calming. It also updates the Pedestrian Mall Act of 1960, everyone's favorite law that they know off the top of their head. This is the law that enabled stuff like Santa Monica's Third Street Promenade, a number of pedestrianized spaces during the pandemic in NorCal and SoCal, Santa Barbara State Street. These are the areas that you have used or are considering to use the Pedestrian Mall Act, but it's just sort of pretty old and antiquated and not really up to date for the modern needs. And so this bill does a number of sort of streamlining on the delivery of bike, walk, and pedestrian projects. We expect this bill to also sort of make some changes. We've heard some really good feedback on the public input process that we have in the bill, and so I don't think there's nothing I can specifically share right now, but we expect that to be narrowed, and we've been talking to the assembly member about that. So yeah. Next one, David. Let's see. Oh, this is
All
you.
right. Up
Sorry.
next, AB 1833 by Assemblymember McKinner. This allows for car insurance companies to use what's called telematics, which is basically technology either in your car or on your phone. And this bill specifically will allow telematics discounts and only discounts. So if you drive safely and you drive responsibly, you will be able to get a discount on your car insurance rates. This is a policy that is allowed in 49 other states. And well, if you're doing the math, that does mean that it's only illegal in California. So this bill will legalize it here in this state. And it also has proven safety benefits in all of those other states. If your car insurance rates are affected by how safe you drive, then you're going to drive safely. So we want to make sure that people are encouraged to be as safe as they can on the roads. All right. Our next bill is AB 2015 by Assemblymember Wicks. When it was first introduced, this bill would have allowed cities to require navigation apps like Google Maps or Apple Maps to not route cut through traffic through designated slow streets. And slow streets are a separate process in state law. And basically the goal was for cities, when they create these slow streets, not allow the cut through traffic that's going to like speed by. This has been amended now to just have the Department of Transportation study the relationship between those navigation apps and the traffic on the roads and see if there's other policies that can come out of that. All right.
And last bill I want to mention specifically of sponsored bills is SB 1423 by Senator Stern. This was a pretty big swing in terms of trying to get more Safe Streets funding in California. We were specifically trying to get that money out of what's called STIP, the State Transportation Improvement Program, which comes directly out of the gas tax, SB1. And so we were trying to put some structure and some limits specifically on ensuring that some of that money was used on street safety, especially as our active transportation program, which I'll mention on the next slide in a moment, continues to have significant budget shortfalls. This bill, I think, made a big splash, and I think it's going to really push an important conversation forward, but definitely faced some pretty strong political headwind very quickly. And so now the bill is going to be amended to study how we can improve access to funding in the ATP program, Active Transportation Program funding system and its application process. Yeah. And then I want to talk about our budget ask this year. We are trying to get the legislature to prioritize $200 million annually for 5 years towards the active transportation program. The active transportation program is our state's premier pot of street safety funding. It goes towards really ambitious projects that really transform communities and make them fundamentally safer. And yet that money has been tight, and it's actually been consistent the past few years, consistently small the past few years. Um, and and overall, only I think like something like 8% of the projects that were applied to actually received funding, which means 92% of the applications that cities spent a lot of time and money and resources got $0 towards safe streets. And so we want to make sure this program is a robust and exciting and doing really cool stuff. So yeah.
Before you
Um,
move on, there's one question in the chat just about like the more general overall conversation about the state transportation budget. Maybe we should address that right now before we move on. And the question about e-bikes, we're going to address that in just a little bit. So hold on, Calvin, we'll get to you. But the question is from Zach, where is the overall conversation on the state transportation budget, including federal formula funding and the possibility of diverting highway funds to transit, active transportation, transit-oriented development?
So, if you mean, I think there's sort of two ways to answer the where question. If you mean on a process level, the state budget is like roughly decided by the middle of June, and so we're sort of along that process where the budget committees are meeting and figuring all of that out. But I think what you mean is like sort of where are things at more sort of socially and how things have really developed, which is that I think there's still been a ton of reticence in the legislature to really move money that goes towards widening or even maintenance towards safety, transit, active transportation. There's been a lot of conversations coming out of the GGRF conversations and just like the broader big picture about how like cap and trade money all works or cap and invest money works. Some of which I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on, and so I don't want to speak like I know more than I do on all of those details. But the long story short is the legislature, I think, still has a long way to go to make what I think are the big changes needed to funding like the good, safe, sustainable things that we want in the world, rather than funding the what's it called the transportation policy of the 20th century, which we do now. Yeah. Okay. Um, I want to just flag, and if we go to one more slide, David, that those were our sponsored bills, but we also track a lot of bills. And so David has the numbers, and I'll let him speak to that. But like a lot of our work is we have the bills that we sort of take the level of ownership on, and those are our sponsored bills. But there's the work of keeping track of every single thing that the legislature is doing and making sure that nothing gets away from us as our small team does here. And so, David, I would love for you to speak to that, and you can go to the next slide after that too, David.
Yeah, so there are like over 4,200 bills that have been introduced over the last 2 years. And during bill introduction season, which is like January, February, I like to go through all of them and see what are the policies that are being proposed that are going to impact Streets for All's issue area. This year, our bill tracker has somewhere between like 150 and 180 bills on it. And you can see here, it's a very colorful spreadsheet with a lot of information, a lot of bills that we're opposing, supporting, and just watching to see if they're in our issue area. And yeah, there's a lot on there, and we're happy to track it. Some of the more notable ones are the first one by Assemblymember Lee, AB 2252 would allow for single stair. If you don't know what that is, essentially, instead of requiring 2 staircases for a building and then needing double loaded corridors, which means rooms on either side, this would only require a single staircase in a building up to 6 floors, which is legal in basically the rest of the world and New York City. Promotes a kind of a development type that's probably much better for walkability and things like that. Next on our list, SB 1279 by Senator Gonzalez is to allow speed cameras on PCH in Long Beach. Long Beach currently is allowed to do speed cameras on all of their other roads, except PCH, because PCH is a state highway. So PCH is also one of their more dangerous roads, especially per lane mile. So we want to make sure that Long Beach is allowed to have this proven safety technology on their dangerous road. Up next, by Assemblymember Schultz, AB 2560 would codify CAPTI goals. And the CAPTI goals are some of the state's climate goals. And they say where we want to get to and how we want to get there. And we want to make sure that it's not just floating out there and it's actually codified in state law so that we meet those goals. Finally, on this list, by Assemblymember Soria, AB 2276 is a pilot program to allow for intelligent speed assist ISA devices for people who regularly speed. And what this kind of device does is it limits your speed so that you can't go over the speed limit. And if you are a convicted speeder, then you should have your speed limited with these devices. Streets for All last year also sponsored a bill. This one by Assemblymember Soria is not sponsored by us, but last year we had a sponsored bill also addressing ISA devices.
Thank you, David. So now we're going to talk about some big trends in the legislature. This is what I always find like really interesting on top of our sponsored bills, which is like how is the legislature reacting to big picture things? And so the first big trend is that there are a ton of e-bike bills. There are, I believe, 9 e-bike bills in the legislature. We're going to highlight 8 of them in this here briefly. And so the big picture, if we can go to the next slide, is that, there's this sort of e-bike versus e-moto problem in the legislature where we have legal e-bikes and then we have e-motos that have taken over the street that people really believe are e-bikes, or law enforcement might believe they're e-bikes and parents might believe they're e-bikes, but they go an exceedingly fast speed. And so we've been really trying to temper the legislature in terms of how it understands this policy problem. But part of the problem, if we go to the next slide, is that we believe the legislature has really been reacting to a number of really reacting, I think, really wrongly to the e-moto problem by trying to like tackle in statute the e-bike problem. And so I want to highlight, so the first 2 bills are our sponsored bills. We think that this really like sort of hits the mark in terms of the nexus that we're trying to hit. The one below that creates some e-bike training course, which we think is fine, and we've been in conversation with Assemblymember Davies about. But the rest of the bills here are particularly concerning. I would say probably most concerning to me, if it were to pass in full tomorrow, would be probably AB 1942. It's a bill that would create and require e-bikes to actually go through licensing and registration at DMV, and creates new crimes and for how e-bikes exist right now. It would effectively set what happened in New Jersey for folks who know to just happen in California immediately, which I think would be a really really damning, and at least from what I understand now in New Jersey, e-bikes are no longer being sold in that state entirely. I also want to highlight AB 1557 by Assemblymember Pappin, which would change the 3-class system in California. This bill, I think, is also sort of poorly done in a number of ways. I think there is merit in some of the other ways that the bill is trying to change, and we're trying to in light of there being kind of assaults on e-bikes on all front, as you can see, there are 8 different policies here, all doing different things. And some of the most sort of draconian are getting some of the most support in the legislature. We've been trying to take strategically thoughtful positions on each of the policies to make sure that we can be really like taken seriously by the legislature, because saying no, we don't want this, etc., I think is not going to be an effective solution. I've also never seen Gavin Newsom, for an example, veto any bill that had e-bike in its name that got to his desk. So yeah, Senator Pappin's bill is trying to sort of change the 3-class system. I think the 3-class system has a lot of imperfections, and I think that's an important thing to recognize. But it would also, if passed in its current form and its current implementation date, have a lot of harm on bike retailers as well, and legal e-bikes especially. AB 2346 by Wilson, the second red one. It requires some changes to the actual manufacturing of e-bikes, which we think are good, but it has some problematic changes around the ways that like riders are supposed to ride their e-bikes that I think are somewhat unenforceable or unfair to them. It also puts them penalties. It puts like a $50,000 penalty on an e-bike retailer for making sort of a simple mistake of like not providing a rules of the road to a rider, which I think really also will threaten e-bike retailers with a fine so high that it would put them out of business on the spot. Um, yeah, the other two at the bottom, I won't even focus on mention. They're a little bit more individually district and county focused, although I think they're still problematic in a number of ways. So, yeah, that's the overall on the e-bikes. I'm sure there will be a lot of questions about those at the end where we're going to talk questions and talk about everything. I'm also going to talk about two bedrock environmental laws that are potentially going to be amended this year. I'm going to give background on the two laws, and I'll let David talk about the bills this year. SB 375 and SB 743 were passed by, at the time, Senator and Pro Tem Darrell Steinberg in 2008 and 2014, respectively. These are like, I think, bedrock in good environmental laws. A lot of people here have like different opinions on CEQA. We've done a number of policies to reform CEQA, but these laws are really ones that take the sort of nexus between smart land use policy, smart transportation policy, and good environmental policy, and sort of meet them all in the middle. SB 375 sets certain sustainable community strategies goals for MPOs. That's a metropolitan planning organization like SCAG. If you don't know what that is, I'm actually proud of you. And SB 743 established VMT, vehicle miles traveled, as the state standard in California, and has moved us away from level of service, which has been a tremendously important environmental protection on the transportation space, and moved us towards more cleaner infrastructure and safer infrastructure. And so, David, I would love for you to talk about SB 1087, 2059, the risks, the pros, cons, what's going on with those, and what we're looking at there.
Yeah, SB 1087 by Senator Cabaldon is basically like a big swing at amending and reforming the sustainable community strategy. The person who originally worked on the bill is also part of this effort. It's being sponsored by the various MPOs, and there are huge working group meetings with environmental organizations and labor unions and builders and a bunch of different people. Um, as it was introduced, we had pretty substantial concerns. They were trying to take away authority from CARB, which is the Air Resources Board, give it to the CTC, the California Transportation Commission, which isn't that great of an organization for our cause. So we're working on amendments. We're getting there. It's slowly moving forward. Bit by bit, it's getting better. Senator Cabaldon is a bit of a friend, so we're looking forward to further working with him. And then the next one, AB 2059 by Assemblymember Wilson, what it's proposing is to cap VMT mitigation funding. So if you're like, I don't know, widening a highway, you only have to pay mitigation up to 5% of the estimated project cost. So if you're doing this thing that encourages more people driving, you only have to pay a certain amount, and we don't think that's right. And we're also a bit worried that it sets a bit of a precedent to set a cap on how much mitigation costs. That's pretty worrying. I will note this only applies in what they call rural counties. That might be their definition, might be a bit too big, but yeah, it's a worrying precedent, and we're working on getting some changes or just opposing that bill.
Before you guys move on, there is one question in the chat that's pretty relevant to this, which is on the Cabaldon bill 1087. Why is it better for CARB to administer the program than CTC?
CARB is a much friendlier agency for us. They actually care about things like the environment and don't regularly approve highway widenings like the CTC does. So
I would say as well that CARB has the technical expertise,
yeah,
and the technical staff to set these sort of environmental air pollution targets, some of the stuff that they do on a regular basis that, I think a lot of people have different opinions on, but it's more of their technical wheelhouse than the California Transportation Commission. I also want to respond to one thing in the chat, which is about who is, advocating for some of the bills that we have concerns about. And so on the e-bike space, some of the advocates for those policies are either the authors themselves, and there's no sponsor for the bill, or it's some of the doctors and medical associations who, like, I think are not clearly seeing the e-bike versus the e-moto issue. They just see two-wheel thing that's electric as the same problem. And then for the environmental policies that we have some concerns about, 1087 is being sponsored by the MPOs, and 2059 is sponsored by Transportation California, which is the industry of road builders and road widening unions who do highway work. Yeah. Next slide. Oh yeah, and so folks might have seen the License to Kill series by Cal Matters. We'll post maybe David, if you could post a link in the chat here for folks to read it if they haven't. It's a damningly good series on how little our state does around DUI enforcement, suspending people's driver's license when they kill people. Some of the most like basic things that I think we all sort of like would expect our state is doing. We're not talking about like the more fancy bike lanes or anything like that. We're talking about just the bare minimum things that are not happening, in which people are killing people in a way that is unjust and immoral after getting their 14th DUI or something crazy like that. And so the good things that there's like maybe 12 DUI bills this year, maybe more actually. The good thing is that we believe that there's going to be more justice for certain victims of DUIs and roadway fatalities, and less of the most egregious actors on the roadway. The bad thing is that we know we're not going to solve the street safety crisis through the penal code, and it's really an infrastructure problem, and the legislature has still been reticent to give more infrastructure money. So pros and cons, but I think on net a good thing. And with that, I think we'll pass it to Robin to talk a little bit about some state politics and what's going on.
All right. I saw a question in the chat about the governor's race. So we are going to talk about it. I wasn't ignoring your question. We've been thinking a lot about how to engage in the governor's race. Obviously, this is kind of an unprecedented situation, and especially in the last week with so much movement happening. Streets for All has not taken an official position on this race yet. We have not made an endorsement. And I think it's unlikely that we will before the primary, although things could potentially change, since they sometimes change quickly, as we're seeing. But we think this is just a huge opportunity. So we're looking at other ways to engage in this race, whether that be candidate forums, working with other groups that are in the environmental world to get transportation to be a part of how they're evaluating these candidates as a broader environmental coalition. And then also looking at ways over the next couple months, whether it's potentially before the primary, but more likely during the general election, getting an actual transportation agenda into the hands of these campaigns. I think, over the past couple of years, as Marc said, Governor Newsom has not vetoed an e-bike bill that has gotten to his desk. He's also been, for those of us in the Bay Area, we know that there have been some difficulties working on transportation funding. The question about how funding, like what are the vibes on funding in Sacramento? I think the governor is a huge part of the vibes on funding, and where transportation funding, how it breaks down in the budget. So this is something we're working a lot on, and it's all, it's a little behind the scenes right now, but hopefully we'll have a lot more to share in the next couple months about more public things that we're doing on the governor's race, and huge opportunity. So we're definitely spending time on that. The other thing, Marc, do you want me to talk to this? I'm happy to.
Feel free. Yeah.
So another way that as an organization, we are always looking at engaging in Sacramento is with our mobility report card. So the 2025 version just came out. We'll put a link in the chat. You can browse through it. We score all of the legislators in the Assembly and the Senate on how they vote on our bills and other bills that we're tracking. This just came out for 2025 about a month ago. So you can look up your legislator and see how they're doing on voting for these mobility bills. And lots of fun stuff in there as well.
Robin, the only thing I want to highlight is our two highest rated legislators. Assemblyman, we don't have that slide, and we probably should have put it in. Assemblymember Mark Gonzalez from like the Koreatown area is the highest rated assembly member with all of his work on transit funding last year and some of the bills that he ran. And Senator Scott Wiener from San Francisco was the highest rated state senator last year with his work on SB 79 and transit funding as well. And I can talk about these two endorsements because these were in SoCal. Sarah Hernandez is who we've endorsed in the race to replace Senator Maria Elena Durazo in the downtown Los Angeles, sort of Glendale, mid-city sort of areas where she represents her state Senate district. Sarah Hernandez is a strong transit champion and has been as her time on the, I believe, the Board of Trustees for oh, I'm forgetting, but forgive me. And then John Erickson is who we've endorsed for replacing Senator Ben Allen, who is terming out in the Santa Monica, West Hollywood, Malibu, Torrance, general area. John Erickson's been a strong champion for biking and walking and street safety as his time as city council in West Hollywood. And so we hope to see these two advance to become senators this next year.
Great. So that is the end of our prepared comment. I know there's a couple of comments in the chat, so we'll follow up on those. But if you have additional questions, now is a great time to put them in the chat. As a reminder, we did record this, so we will be posting it on YouTube. If you missed anything, you can go back and check it out later. And then finally, Marc and David run this team. They have a lot of volunteers that help them with all kinds of things. If you want to volunteer and get involved, go to our website, streetsforall.org/volunteer. And then if you want to become a member and support our work longer term, streetsforall.org/members club is the link for that as well. And that supports us across the state. So with that, we can leave those links up if you want, Marc. If anyone has questions, you can also use the raise hand function if you don't want to put them in the chat. Use the raise hand on Zoom and we can call on people and unmute you so you can ask your question live. That's sometimes a lot easier than the chat. And let's go to the chat. I think there were a couple of things in
If
here.
people don't ask questions, I'm gonna start calling on someone, Robin, just so you know. I'm gonna make someone say something.
All right, we had some chatter, more chatter about e-bikes and the California Medical Association.
Okay, I'm gonna Miriam, you always have something to say, and I mean that with love. So any reactions, questions? What do you think? Oh, you can't mute. Do we have to unmute Miriam? Ask to unmute. There we go. I did it, I think.
Such power. I mean, one quick question is just I'm still stuck on the sustainable community stuff because I don't feel that I know enough about how much that's actually impacted outcomes. These like planning requirements, and one of the things they seem to do is like double the period before you need to add a new sustainable communities strategy. I guess I was surprised that environmental groups are backing it, since they're so involved in the planning process too. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on the benefits of these things.
I'm going to take a first stab at answering, and then David, I'd love for your thoughts. But I want to start by saying that, like, I think it's not uncontroversial to say that SB 375, the current Sustainable Community Strategy framework, doesn't really work that well right now. And the idea of opening it up is like, and also having that led by the MPOs who do want to like who questionably who it's not as clear have the same environmental goals as us, I think opens it up for like effectively not working at all or actually working against us. And I think that's where some of the anxieties are. And so in the negotiation on this policy, it's going to be a give and take. It's going to be like there does need to be more reasonable process around it. And we want to make sure it's actually effective and still achieving its purported goals, which it's sometimes been working, sometimes less so been working now. And that's my like somewhat diplomatic, but also somewhat like it's complicated answer for you. David, feel free to chime in since you've been more on top of this than I have.
I think I just want to respond to like the notes of like support, and like I'll just say like most environmental groups have like concerns with the bill, um, and like I think most of the affected stakeholders have concerns, but like we're all actively working on it, and there are a lot of groups working on it and working with Senator Cabaldon's office on this, and I think I'll just leave it at that.
Zach has his hand raised, so Zach, let's let you unmute here.
Yeah, I can just kind of unpack my comments about the BMT Mitigation Bank and AB 2059 um, or SB. Thanks, I hadn't been following that bill at all. Um, so my overall thought, kind of since before this concept made it into legislature, is that it's a very cumbersome way to uh, try to do what we want to do, which is like direct housing to infill locations and slow down or stop highway expansion. I think the risk is um, it's what they're proposing to do with their guidance is to create uh, a pretty gigantic implicit fee if you take it at face value. If you were to, opt into using that mechanism on the order of like $100,000 per door for a new housing development that doesn't qualify for CEQA exemption. So I can certainly see why some folks might think that's a little bit too harsh and could have kind of collateral damage on housing supply. Um, it would be interesting to think about like specifying that we want to draw a distinction between housing and highway expansion. Um, it's still tricky though, because in order to uh, like you can set the fee accurately, in which case um, highway expansion would stop or the program would never be used because the fee would be prohibitive, or you kind of water it down and it becomes just like a small nominal fee. So yeah, it seems really tricky. Let me know if that made sense or you have questions.
I think I have enough questions that we should talk offline.
Okay.
But I appreciate you giving that overview, and I agree with the tricky nature of what you described. So yeah, but I appreciate you breaking that down, Zach.
Sure.
Let's go. There's Warren who has his hand up, and then there's some questions in the chat next from Calvin and others. I want to make sure we don't miss, but Warren should be able to unmute theoretically.
There we go. Got it. I got unmuted, then unmuted myself because I hit the same button. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate all the work you guys are doing. Marc, I know you and I have had some conversations around the Wicks bill 1970, is it 1976? 1976
Yeah.
before. Just are you able to share a little bit more about the proposed changes, or at least when we might be hearing about that? Obviously, like I asked because I'm meeting with Wicks's office next week for the Cal Bike Summit. We have our lobby day, so I want to for me going into that. Will we hear anything before then, or should I? It's not one of our asks, but I would love to be like, hey, and where I'm like as a constituent, I'm fully on board, or not. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what I'm able to share. I don't want to get ahead of the author's office, but I think
Fair enough.
what we've advised her is that like the points that you and Robert, but also even like actors like the League of Cities have brought our way are that there is a level of like reasonableness that we totally agree with on that. And so I think that I was trying to think like what's the thing that we all agree on. And the thing that we all agree on is that public meetings on like bike lanes and stuff, to the extent that they should happen, they should focus on the design of those bike lanes rather than the existence of those bike lanes. And that is the feedback I've given to Assemblymember Wix's office. I can't tell you the policy direction just yet, but that's the feedback we've given her.
Thank you. That's very helpful, Mark. And again, I want to emphasize, for everybody, I'm fully in support of the intent of the bill. I just have some feedback,
Totally.
and thank you for conveying that, Mark. Just around the implementation, just from where I sit on the advocacy side. Not often do I find myself agreeing with the League of Cities. So there's that, the elephant dwarf meme. So thanks again for everything. That's all the questions I have.
Broken clock strikes twice. Calvin. Sorry, I gotta let you unmute, right? My bad. I need help.
Correct. I'm like, I'm ready. Yeah, just, I mean, as I posed in the comments, first of all, really appreciate all the work you're doing and tracking all this and sponsoring and engaging, especially for me as someone who's very passionate about e-bikes and engaged in this area. Really appreciate. And so you mentioned sort of staying actively engaged in the e-bike legislation, whether you're pro or con. And I was just curious how receptive you're finding the bill sponsors, other supporters to the arguments you're putting forward. And so that, and if there's anything else, we as sort of other folks in this sphere can do to help engage as well.
I saw your question in the chat, and I was trying to think about how to answer this. And I think that there is a position I have on a lot of these, like a true Marc belief on a lot of these bills that we are not articulating in the legislature, which, like, to be candid, is that like we don't agree with almost anything about any of these bills because we think that they're sort of like they're missing the mark, they're sort of overblown. If you talk me in the right mood, I could even be convinced that like these super fast e-motos are like good in some circumstances. But like we understand that there's like optics concerns. We understand that there's safety concerns. So we've approached a lot of these bills coming at a hyper pragmatic political place that like we're just one fish in the sea with a lot of legislators who are getting calls every day about e-bikes. So we're trying to like be really, really reasonable. And we have found that that's still not really getting through as much as we'd want. And that the legislature, I think, and a lot of legislators still want to do like really ambitiously bad policy on e-bikes, despite us, I think, coming at this from a really pragmatic place. And so, we are reevaluating how we want to approach, and maybe we need to go full oppose or full hands on deck opposed to these. I think that when we talk to certain allies, they understand the problems that we're raising, and I think there are more sort of backdoor political ways that we are going to be engaging in, and we are actively engaging in. But in this sort of like face-to-face level, I feel like I'm getting told by staff that like our concerns make sense, but it's not materializing in real policy change thus far, which is like worrying. It's really worrying when we're taking a position that's like, yeah, we know this might hurt some bike companies and retailers, but we think it's pragmatic and we think it's reasonable. So can you meet us in the middle? And we're getting told no, and bills are still moving forward. So sorry, not to be a Debbie Downer, but that's my like assessment. Yeah. If you want me to like ask a follow-up, and then I can unmute you or whatever. But yeah.
I know we had some Bike East Bay folks on the call too. They're running a big petition to protest 1942. So I don't know if they have any insights on that one, but
Yeah, I don't know if
I think Justin's here, but I don't know if he's.
I gave him the chance to unmute.
Yeah, I mean we have similar. We have talked to the office, expressed our concerns. We've heard and haven't seen substantial changes to it. I mean, committee's happening next Monday, so we'll see if that can shake a little bit of them. As well, yeah, same thing with 1557 about in Silicon Valley. So looking down there as well. I think, yeah, we haven't seen the changes from these bills, but we're hoping public pressure makes them have a second thought and figure out what is the root problem of all this.
Yeah. Agreed. And I just want to express one more frustration too, is Streets for All. I'm not afraid of being kind of cocky about this. Like we were the only group to support SB 381 4 years ago by Senator now Congressman Dave Min, which instituted the Mineta Transportation Report. And for those who don't know, San Jose State, because of the legislature, did this really massive 200-page report on e-bikes. And like we supported that. We were the only group who support that bill. And I think part of the reason why is because like for folks who don't know, I live in Orange County. I feel like I saw some of the issues with, teenagers on these electric two-wheel devices a little bit earlier than some other people did because of sort of the same way that Marin County saw them as well. And we have this fantastic report. It's so well done. I don't agree with every recommendation in it, but I mean, it's in general, it is such a well done study. And we're not seeing policy come out of that. We're seeing just random whims of legislators come out of that, unfortunately. And it's quite frustrating because it's been the thing that we've sort of used to hold off worse bills the last 3 years. We've said, wait for the Mineta report to come out to run a bill, run the recommendation. And we're still not necessarily seeing that right now. So it's frustrating. Not all hope is lost. And I wouldn't say I want to be clear. I'm not pessimistic about our chances to succeed in these policy areas. It's just been frustrating so far. I want to respond to in the chat was about Santa Barbara and State Street. I went to UC Santa Barbara, so this is close to my heart. I don't think we have a current plan to engage on the State Street conversation and whether State Street will be pedestrianized or whatever Santa Barbara chooses to do. If there are locals who would like Streets for All to engage, please like email me and hit me up. I always love to send a good letter on a place that really should be pedestrianized. What I will say is that in AB 1976 by Assemblymember Wicks, we are changing the way the Pedestrian Mall Act would work. And the city of Santa Barbara has been thinking about using the Pedestrian Mall Act process to pedestrianize State Street. And in streamlining the way that the PMA of 1960 works, we think it would help and aid the city of Santa Barbara as well as the city of Ventura in pedestrianizing their downtowns. But that's first an affirmative choice that they need to make for themselves before they go through the actual procedural process laid out in law. So in some sense, we're kind of doing something on the issue, but in some sense, we're also not directly commenting on what Santa Barbara is doing.
But if there are ways we can help you, let us know.
Yeah, I'll put my email in the chat, just in case.
There's a question in chat. What do you think would be a good policy for e-bike registration, licensing, insuring, operator licensing? I think SB 1167 is the policy we need here, because 1167 clarifies what is a legal e-bike and what is not. And then it requires anything that is not a legal e-bike to have license and registration requirements and be sold as an actual motorcycle, essentially, and meet the same requirements as a motorcycle, which means that it has to have license and registration. So we think that e-bikes as classified in current state law should not be subject to license and registration requirements, just like normal bicycles should not be subject to license and registration requirements. I'll also say that class 3 e-bikes currently are age restricted. So a class 3 e-bike is an e-bike that can go up to 28 miles an hour with pedal assist, and that is already restricted to riders over 16, I believe. Is it 16 or 18?
16 plus, yeah.
Plus,
yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'll add that like I think there's questions around like how does the three class system work in California? There's questions on like what's best for fairness versus what's best for equity versus what's best for safety. Depending on what lens you use, you can come up with different answers. But I think like I would say we all sort of unequivocally agree that like the registration and licensure and insurance side of things is probably inappropriate for the legal e-bikes that exist right now. And every other question that's in the middle of that, I think we can all debate. Zach and I could debate, Zach Subin and I could debate, Justin and I might disagree on stuff, but in general, I think we're trying to avoid the bureaucratic logistical hassles of, frankly, car ownership for what is otherwise a bicycle.
All right, well, we're at 12:57, and if there are no more questions, I think we'll give everyone 3 minutes of your day back Thanks everyone for coming. We will post the video of this on our YouTube channel, so look out for it there, and we'll email that out to everyone who registered. Marc put his email in the chat. Feel free to reach out to us through the contact form on our website. I'm also Robin at streetsforall.org, so feel free to reach out to me and let us know how we can help you at the local level, or if you have any feedback on any of these bills and anything else going on in Sacramento. And hopefully we'll see you again on a future event.
Thanks everyone for being here and caring too. That's awesome. So cool. Gabe, maybe we pause recording.